where do you see the bulk of those resources going?
Will be primarily...
The 0.4 wouldn't count towards the public debt, the IMF facility. I'm asking you.
Yes, we have to.
This week in Jamaica's Parliament, opposition leader Mark Golding put Minister Fayval Williams on the spot with tough questions about Hurricane Melissa relief funds and the government's debt-to-GDP projections. Minister Williams gave a strong defense of her position. But the big question is, did she really address Golding's concerns, or did she skillfully sidestep them? Or was there nothing controversial to address in the first place? Take a listen to their first exchange. Footage courtesy of PBCJ.
Minister, just a couple of questions. The overall funding package that was announced from multilateral sources, I think of 6.7 billion US for the Hurricane Melissa recovery. That works out, I think, somewhere in the region of 20% of GDP, depending, where GDP is, but somewhere in that region. I noticed that the government's projections indicate that the debt-to-GDP ratio doesn't get elevated in the medium term beyond 68% or thereabouts. How does that, and given that the projected rates of growth are quite modest, and we have to recover from a reduction in real GDP this fiscal year as a result of the catastrophe, how does that square in terms? I know that for some of it is private sector and probably won't come on the books as debt, but over 4 billion of it, I think, is loans of some sort. So how does that, that's what I was saying, is around 20% of GDP, the loan portion. So how does that square with your projections for debt to GDP growth?
All right, so member, yes, you're right about the 6.7 billion. You have to subtract off of that the 0.7, which is our own resources, not debt, just resources, from the cat bond and other
what
areas.
What figure is that?
0.7,
Yeah.
So that leaves 6,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Minus off the 2.4 for private sector. So that would leave you with 3.6.
Okay.
There is, call it 0.4, which is the IMF facility that we have received already. That is to help us with balance of payment support. So that
doesn't count towards the debt to GDP.
But anyhow, the 3.6, the 3.2, after you take off the 0.4, will be primarily...
The 0.4 wouldn't count towards the public debt, the IMF facility. I'm asking you.
Yes, it
okay.
will. The 3.2 that's left it's considered investment loans, so it's very project specific, and you are able to access it once you have defined what the projects are. So the point is, we will not be taking this all at once on our books. It will be spread out over time, and you can see how your debt to GDP can be managed over a period of time.
But the medium-term projections are where I was focused on, where the debt to GDP ratio peaks at around 68% as projected. I would imagine these facilities would be drawn down over a similar period.
Right, but also there's growth, there's recovery in the GDP that will help as well. Yes, we have to have recovery. We've seen recovery after the pandemic. We've seen recovery after Hurricane Beryl. So there's no reason not to expect full recovery.
But recovery to where you were is one thing, but after recovery, what we've seen is that we've normalized back to very modest levels of growth. So, all of us would like to see that dynamic change, but that's the main conundrum facing the economy. So I'm just questioning, how you accommodate over that medium-term period all those additional loans and stick within that projection as to the debt to GDP.
So again, member, two things would be happening. One, the growth in the GDP, that would help your debt to GDP ratio, and the fact that we will judiciously take on these loans over time.
Yeah, but as you borrow them, they accumulate in your debt
Right,
stock.
but your GDP is growing as well.
Yeah.
So, that's
Modestly.
that balance.
All right.
The debt to GDP question is especially important because it helps to clarify the direction of the country's public finances going forward. It also has implications for how much fiscal space the government may have in the future, including its ability to borrow and the level of spending that could be sustained. At the end of the exchange, Golding says, "All right," suggesting his concerns were addressed. Yet his tone throughout hinted he wasn't fully convinced. So, did he get the clarity he was looking for? Or did Minister Williams anticipate his strategy and navigate the questions carefully? Golding wasn't done yet, though. His next question focused on the Hurricane Melissa Housing Recovery Program, specifically how the relief funds will be allocated and spent. Here's what he asked, and how Minister Williams responded.
And the other question I had relates to the housing program, the roof program, which seems to be the main housing repair and recovery program announced. And it's roughly 60 million US, thereabouts, 10 billion Jamaican dollars. And that represents less than 10% of that less than 1% of that $6.7 billion funding envelope that has been identified. So where do you see the bulk of those resources going, of that $6.7 billion? What areas do you anticipate that financing over the time?
So this financing from the international financial institutions must go towards reconstruction, restoration. It must go towards building resilience so that the next time around, God forbid, we're not thrown back in the way that we were through Melissa. So you will see the bulk of this going into capital spending over the next 5 years or so. If obviously we're borrowing and we have to make the borrowing count. We have to make the borrowing go towards capital spending in water infrastructure, in road development, in things that will produce growth for the Jamaican economy. You saw early right after the aftermath of the hurricane, there were a lot of resources dedicated to the relief effort to get people food, shelter, to ensure that they could begin to get on their feet again. But we have moved out of the relief stage, or are moving out of the relief stage into reconstruction and recovery, building in resilience as we go along, so that these loans can produce the kinds of investments that will lead to stronger GDP growth.
So there you have it. Both of Mark Golding's questions were addressed by Minister Williams. While the discussion could have become heated, it appears both walked away satisfied. Golding having challenged government spending and debt projections, and Williams having navigated the questions without any slip-ups. But what do you think? Did Mark Golding get full answers on the Hurricane Melissa relief funds and government debt forecasts? Or did Fayval Williams skillfully dodge any tricky points? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and join the conversation about Jamaica news and government accountability. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the Jamaica Parliament debate, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below.